Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome. Now, as we take a look back to the past year at this city of ours that looked a whole lot different about a year ago, when we talk about the flood and we think about kind of what we've been through as a community, what are the things that stand out in your mind?
So many things. You know, I've spent some time reflecting on this past year, and in many ways, and for many people, it was a really tough year. Mm-hmm. It was a year of tragedy, a year of tribulation, but ultimately it was a year of triumph for our community. We showed the world who we are, what we do, and how we look after one another. And to me, that's extraordinary. You know, I always say that I saw so much in the last year. I was in helicopters and planes and walking on the streets and getting my boots muddy. And I saw those rivers, both of them running higher and faster and angrier than I've ever seen before. I saw devastation in neighborhoods. And every time I saw a house with a bunch of what looked like garbage piled up taller than the garage on the front lawn, I thought to myself, that looks like garbage, but you know, it's their kids' artwork. It's the report cards. It's the couch that they saw in a catalog and they scrimped and saved for because they needed that couch. It's people's lives that are out there. And so there was a lot that, you know, hits you. But I will tell you that the image that I will never forget, the image that sticks in my mind, and I hope in everyone's mind, is the image of that volunteer. That person covered from head to toe in mud and mosquito bites and bruised and battered, working incredibly hard to save the home of someone she doesn't even know. And to me, that's who we are, and that's what we do.
Now, some of the people we've talked to for this special, of course, have said, you know, the flood feels like a distant memory almost. It feels like we've come so far since then, while others, you know, who are still dealing with some of the fallout day to day, they feel like it just happened yesterday. I'm curious to know, what's your perspective on the time?
Both. You know, it's been a year. It feels like it was a week. It feels like it was 100 years. And certainly so many people like me are looking up at the sky when it rains. You know, I get all of the river flow forecasts, and I know where we are, and I know the numbers of cubic meters per second that are going through the river. But whenever I'm crossing it, I still pause and stop at the riverbank and look at it and think about what might be. And I think we're all going to feel that way for a while.
We often hear people say, you know, sometimes we learn more from our failures than we do from our successes. If you had to identify one thing maybe that we could have done better in those days immediately following, what would you pick?
You know, I have to say that I'm really proud of my colleagues at the City of Calgary for their response, that immediate first phase. Mm-hmm. I think that they did incredible work, and the fact that we had the costliest natural disaster in Canadian history, but we had such little loss of life or injury, says a lot about that. Now look, we lost somebody. We lost an amazing human being, and going to that funeral was one of the toughest things I've ever done. But by and large, I'm very proud of the work that my colleagues did and that citizens did over those first few days. Could we have been better? Sure. You know, there was some seniors buildings in the East Village that we decided not to evacuate because we wanted to leave those people in place for a little while, and when we realized it would be dangerous for them to stay in their homes, we had to evacuate quite quickly. We didn't have a great plan for where they should go, and we have to look after the most vulnerable citizens, obviously. So certainly there are things we've learned. We've also learned about how we can have a little more preparation time with technology, extend that window even a couple of hours, allowing us to deploy more quickly. I'll give you a simple example. We had temporary structures, temporary berms that were 1.5 feet in diameter. We learned they just weren't big enough. So now we've ordered the 3-foot ones, so you don't have to make pyramids, you can put the 3-foot one. And so things like that, we will constantly be getting better.
Now, we've seen a lot of the mitigation work that's been done in the last few months in lots of different areas of the city. Do you and your councils at City Hall maybe feel a little bit more pressure to make sure we never have something like what happened last year?
We can't stop flooding.
Right.
It will happen. What we can do is we can mitigate the damage that it causes. And so currently there are 3 different mitigation projects under debate, 2 upstream of Calgary and 1 a diversion tunnel within Calgary. Okay. We're going to do some more engineering. We got to get this one right. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in multi-year construction projects. The general engineering seems to say that any 2 of the 3 will do the job. And so then we have to have this discussion and figure out what to do with our partners at the province. But we'll make the right decision. We'll do it quickly, but we'll make the right decision.
What is the biggest legacy left behind for the citizens of Calgary since the 2013 floods?
You know, there are a lot of things that we can talk about in terms of the recovery process over the last year where things could have gone better. You know, I know that there's a lot of folks who are frustrated with the disaster recovery program, with getting the money that they need in order to make the repairs they need and so on, and all of that will continue. But I remember a couple weeks after the flood, I was in Bowness. I was walking through Bow Crescent, which is one of the streets that was very badly hit. And at this point, most of the cleanup, at least the visible cleanup, had happened. And I met a couple. I went into their house, and they were back in their house, but there was nothing there. The house had been stripped down to the studs, main floor, everything. I think they were sleeping in hammocks. It was like camping indoors. And they had found a piece of plywood in their basement. And they had painted a message on the plywood, and they nailed it to the tree out front. And that sign said, "We lost some stuff. We gained a community." That's it.
That's the legacy. Mr. Mayor, thanks for taking the
Thank
time
you.
to do this. You bet. We'll be back with more right after this.
This is our city. This is the spirit of our city. Thank you all so much for being here.